Good morning and welcome to Coffee and the Word. You ever felt small? You ever felt insignificant? You ever felt like you really don't matter all that much? And I know some of you are like, no, I've never felt that, but I talk to enough people to know that there are many of you who have felt that way or maybe feel that way now. And one of the cool stories about God and how he ushered in this Messiah, how he ushered in Emmanuel, is that he used the small and the insignificant. He used what the world tended to look down upon. Jesus was born in a little bitty town called Nazareth. In comparison, it was one of the smallest cities. It was insignificant, in fact. There was nothing about it that would have drawn you to it. Like there was no reason why Bethlehem would be the place that the Messiah would come, except that God said it'll be Bethlehem where Jesus comes to earth. It'll be Bethlehem. In fact, in Micah 5:2, we're told that Bethlehem would be the town where he is born. I want to say a couple of things about that. God predicted or prophesied or let you know something. I told you, I think, in the second video of this series, that the prophecies are one of the greatest evidences of the Messiah's, um, of Jesus being the Messiah. Because long before Jesus was born, long before Bethlehem, long before Mary, long before any of that, God was placing the narrative in place. And we talked about the fact that the prophecies um, would have been statistically impossible for someone to accidentally or not intentionally fulfill these promises and these prophecies. And so he verifies or validates who he is by fulfilling these prophecies. Well, one of those prophecies is in Micah 5:2, which talks about Bethlehem, the runt of the litter of towns in the area. God chose for him to be born. And the interesting thing is his parents weren't even living in Bethlehem. They were required to go back to Bethlehem for a census. And we all know the manger story and the wise men and Mary and Joseph traveling to Bethlehem for the census. And we'll talk more about that as we go. But I want you to think about the fact that God didn't choose the hub of significance in that area. He didn't have the king born in Jerusalem, which would have been the capital, right? He didn't have the king born in this mighty city. He had the king born in little old Bethlehem. God has never been interested in what the world calls great. God has always used something that would be considered insignificant by world standards, but God gives significance to. Wealth, fame, popularity, power, none of these are noteworthy to God. I love what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. He said, God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. What he can do in someone's life is not limited. Let me say this again. What he can do in your life is not limited by earthly status. If Bethlehem was the runt of the litter, and maybe you feel like the runt of the litter, how much more glory is brought to God when He rises the runt of the liver or the litter or the insignificant things up to prominence? How much more glory is brought to God when He uses what the world says is unusable? The story of Christmas is about God raising up, sending forth a Messiah who was born in a little town of Bethlehem. And he wasn't after, and I want you to hear this, he didn't come in the world to rescue the mighty and the powerful, although they're welcome. He came in the world to rescue the sick and sinful. He came in the world to rescue you. When I was growing up, there were many times in my life when I felt insignificant. I felt unseen. I felt like people didn't acknowledge me. I felt like I was never going to amount to much. And for some reason, and I still have yet to fully understand, God pulled me out of that and placed me in a place where I get to tell the world His story. I get to tell the world about who He is. And He chose me, foolish and weak, to deliver His strong and wise message. You don't have to be a superstar to be God's chosen. In fact, He doesn't choose the superstars, He makes them. All of these heroes of faith were just ordinary people God pulled out of the ordinary and gave them an extraordinary mission. You too have an extraordinary mission. I hope as we go through this Christmas season, especially if you're somebody who feels like you're insignificant and unseen, you'll remember that God saw Bethlehem, the runt of the litter, and He made it the birthplace of Jesus. He sees you, and He wants to make you something too, but something for His kingdom that we first seek. God bless you. Hope you have a wonderful day. This has been another edition of Coffee and the Word.